Fire in 5 minutes or less. Western Lipton Media shared a 40-second snippet shortly after the show concluded. Don't edit, nothing to say. The perfect shot. Clint standing there in the dark delivering that last razor-sharp line. What's outdated is mistaking noise for wisdom. No music, no sound effects, just the force of the words like thunder. It struck the hashtag #Eastwood Cuts Deeper, became popular throughout the country. In only 4 minutes it was immediately republished by conservative pages. He didn't shout, he didn't have to. Clint just used one phrase to end a Hollywood legend. It wasn't just conservatives, though. It was shared even by seasoned reviewers and impartial voices. What side you on doesn't matter to me. Power was that no sound, no rage, only honor. That's what our nation is lacking. Then came the memes. One had a red-faced Darrow slumped on his chair written, "When you try to cancel Clint, and he cancels the entire room." Another Clint is in news, his arms by his sides, his face composed. It says, "Lens don't yell, they wait." The host Jack Reeves shared a behind-the-scenes picture. Clint was only a silhouette disappearing into darkness as he walked down a dark hallway by himself. "I've hosted for 20 years, he captioned. "I've never witnessed a takedown that's silent and brutal." However, the most subtly pivotal moment did not occur on the internet. It took place right before Clint departed. Near the exit, Clint was overtaken by a young stagehand about 19 years old who had barely known him from replays. He said, "Mr. Eastwood," in a quiet, almost apprehensive voice that was something else. After giving him a quick nod, Clint murmured, "Don't follow the noise, kid." Without pausing his gait, pay attention to the wait. Then he vanished into the darkness. Darrow, surrounded by nervous employees, exited the studio late. "Don't push stop, no interviews." One tweet the next morning. "The world still needs voices that speak up for truth." Even though Clint is a good actor, he did speak, was the top response. "You simply couldn't take it." No yelling was heard. "Don't be offensive." No show. Only a few sentences. Final, weighty and harsh. Clint Eastwood changed from being called a relic to a fresh representation of unwavering fortitude. In less than 24 hours, he stood motionless and stated the truth, not because he battled harder. The repercussions had already started, even if the dust had hardly settled. Commentators on politics stepped in. Clint Eastwood was praised by right-wing media as the embodiment of true American grit, dismissed left-wing pundits. A retired actor pulled out a well-timed publicity stunt, but something more profound had changed behind the scenes. This was more than simply a viral moment. It served as a reminder that in a society full of sound bites, fury and spin, silence still has strength. Clint Eastwood's name shot to the top of search results in a matter of days. The fight was rebroadcast by news networks. Talk radio presenters analyzed each sentence behind closed doors. Both Republican and independent political analysts acknowledged the fact that he didn't simply win the moment. The battlefield was altered by him. There was no denying the repercussions for Robert Darrow. Hollywood's once defiant voice now sounded muted. His interviews became less compelling. His words seemed forced and unauthentic. He was no longer viewed as a fighter, but rather as a guy who had been wounded and never recovered. Even ardent supporters started to falter. One person remarked that he looks more like a character chasing relevance than a man standing for anything real. Clint, however, didn't like the occasion. "No tweets, no interviews, no victory lap. I've said my piece," read a modest remark in a little California newspaper. "A man should only talk when it is really necessary, in my opinion." And perhaps that's why it was significant, because Clint Eastwood didn't raise his voice above the clamor. In a society that is hooked to incessant criticism, he spoke deliberately after waiting for the noise to subside on its own. It has nothing to do with right or left. It has nothing to do with popular hashtags. It was about who stood for something when it mattered and who was taller when the lights came on. The effects went beyond politics. It was intimate. The question, "Am I listening for truth or just looking for someone who sounds like me?" caused millions of people to pause and consider this. Furthermore, it wasn't limited to the elderly. "I didn't grow up watching Clint Eastwood movies, but last night I saw what real strength looks like, and it wasn't yelling." A 22-year-old podcaster said in a tweet, Clint Eastwood didn't only prevail in a debate at that quiet moment on stage, he served as a reminder of America's past and potential future. Clint Eastwood taught us that often the quietest voice has the most impact in a society when everyone is vying for attention. He didn't return to return the clap. He didn't follow the fad. He arrived to serve as a reminder to America of what true strength, discipline, and respect once looked like. Just presence, no yelling or rage. He maintained his composure, remained focused, and demonstrated that you don't need to shout to stand tall. And perhaps it is the lesson we should learn going ahead. Politics has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with Hollywood. It was about the type of persona that says less but conveys more. Let us ask you this. Have you ever been undervalued or assessed based on your history, age, or silence? Have you ever had to demonstrate that being still is not a sign of weakness? Shouting is never as strong as standing still, listening and waiting. Tell us if this story resonated with you on a personal level. Leave a comment, share your story, and let's remind this generation and each other that morality is still important, because the most truthful voice ultimately reverberates the longest, not the loudest one. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. The screen crackles with the buzz of a breaking news alert, the kind that stops you mid-sip and glues you to the TV. A courtroom showdown has just erupted, one that's already being called the legal clash of the decade. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a man no stranger to controversy, has slapped a staggering $250,000 fine on repertory Jasmine Crockett, the fiery Texas Democrat known for her razor-sharp tongue and unapologetic style. But what happened next? Crockett's response was so raw, so electrifying, it left the courtroom stunned, and if whispers are true, Kavanaugh himself in tears. This is the story of a battle that's about to set the nation ablaze. The scene unfolds in a packed Washington, D.C. courtroom, the air thick with anticipation. Reporters scribble furiously, cameras hum, and spectators lean forward, barely breathing. The case began as a procedural dispute, something about Crockett's public statements allegedly undermining judicial integrity, but it spiraled into a cultural firestorm. Kavanaugh is seated at the bench, his expression stern, delivers the ruling that sends shock waves. Brett Kavanaugh said, "This court has no choice but to impose a fine of $250,000 on Representative Jasmine Crockett for her reckless and inflammatory remarks. Your words, Congresswoman, have endangered the public's trust in this institution, and such actions cannot go unpunished. You have 1 week to comply or further consequences will follow." The room gasps. $250,000 for words. Murmurs ripple through the crowd, but Crockett, standing tall at the defendant's table, doesn't flinch. Her eyes lock onto Kavanaugh as a spark of defiance igniting. She adjusts her blazer, steps to the podium, and lets loose a response that no one saw coming. Jasmine Crockett said, "Justice Kavanaugh, with all due respect, you think a fine's going to silence me? You think $250,000 is going to make me bow down and shut up? Let's get one thing straight. I'm not here to play nice with a system that's been picking and choosing who gets justice since before I was born. You want to talk about trust? How about the trust black women like me have never had in courts like this? You want to find me fine, but you're not finding my voice, my truth, or my fight." The courtroom freezes. A few spectators clap before being shushed. Kavanaugh's jaw tightens, but Crockett's just getting started. She leans forward, her voice steady but blazing. Jasmine Crockett said, "You sit up there cloaked in that robe acting like you're above it all, but let's not pretend. You've been in the hot seat before, Justice. You felt the weight of public scrutiny, the sting of questions you couldn't answer, so don't lecture me about integrity when this whole system's built on protecting the powerful. My words scare you? Good, they're supposed to, because truth doesn't come cheap, and I'm not paying your price to water it down." Kavanaugh shifts in his seat, his face a mix of frustration and something else, maybe a flicker of doubt. He bangs his gavel, trying to regain control, but the energy in the room is electric. He clears his throat and fires back. Brett Kavanaugh said, "Congresswoman, you misunderstand the purpose of this court. This isn't about silencing you, it's about accountability. Your rhetoric has incited division, and as a public servant you have a duty to uphold civility. You can't just say whatever you want and expect no consequences. The rule of law demands order, and I'm enforcing it." Crockett smirks. Undeterred, she crosses her arms, tilting her head as if sizing him up. The crowd leans and, sensing the debate's about to escalate, Jasmine Crockett said, "Civility? Oh please, Justice, don't come at me with that. Civility is what you demand when you're scared of being called out. You want order. That's just code for keeping things the way they've always been, where people like me stay in our lane and don't make waves. But I'm not here for your order. I'm here for the people who've been crushed by it. You think my words divide? No, sir. They expose a system that fines me for speaking while letting others skate for doing far worse." The crowd murmurs again, louder this time. A few nod in agreement, while others whisper nervously. Kavanaugh's face wreens, but is not backing down. He leans forward, his voice rising. Brett Kavanaugh said, "You're out of line, Congresswoman. This court isn't your soapbox. You've been given a platform, and you've abused it. Your accusations are baseless, and this fine isn't about your identity. It's about your actions. You can't hide behind claims of injustice to justify breaking the rules. If everyone spoke like you, we'd have chaos." Crockett laughs, a sharp, unyielding sound that cuts through the tension. She steps closer to the podium, her presence commanding every eye in the room. Jasmine Crockett said, Chaos, you want to talk chaos? Look around. Justice, this country is already in chaos, and it's not because of my words, it's because of decisions made in rooms like this by people like you who think justice is a gavel and a fine. You want to punish me for saying what millions are thinking. Go ahead, but you're not just finding me, you're telling every woman, every person of color, every person who's ever been silenced that their voice comes with a price tag, and I'm not paying it. Quietly, Kavanaugh's eyes narrow, but there's a pause, a moment where he seems to falter. The weight of her words hangs heavy, and the courtroom feels like it's holding its breath. He adjusts his glasses, trying to steady himself. Brett Kavanaugh said, "This isn't personal, Congresswoman. I'm upholding the law as I've sworn to do. You're making this about race, about gender, but it's about responsibility. You can't just accuse the system of bias without evidence. Show me proof, not passion." Crockett's eyes flash with intensity. She points a finger not at Kavanaugh, but at the air, as if addressing the whole world. Jasmine Crockett said, "Proof? You want proof? How about the history of this country where laws were written to keep people like me out of power? How about the fact that I'm standing here fine for speaking while others can lie under oath and walk free? You want evidence? Look at the faces in this room. Look at who's always paying the price for telling the truth. Passion? Yeah, I've got passion because I'm fighting for people who don't get a microphone. You want me to calm down? Tell that to the families who can't afford justice." The room erupts in a mix of cheers and boos. The Bally of calls for order, but Crockett's words have lit a fuse. Kavanaugh bangs his gavel again, harder this time, his voice strained. Brett Kavanaugh said, "Enough, this is a courtroom.